This is the CBS Evening News. I'm 𝗨𝘂𝗋𝗆, sitting in for Dan Rather. Good evening. A United Airlines DC-10 with 298 people aboard crashed, cartwheeled, and broke apart today just short of the runway at the Sioux City, Iowa airport. Flight 232 was bound from Denver to Chicago with 287 passengers and 11 crew members. According to witnesses, the plane developed trouble, descended to 11,000 feet while they worked feverishly below to prepare for the plane coming in. The pilot apparently attempted an emergency landing when the plane experienced complete hydraulic failure, in the words of a spokesman for the Federal Aviation Administration. A witness said the plane crossed a highway with its wheels and its flaps down, apparently struggling to keep itself in the air. It narrowly cleared some buildings, then it crashed about half a mile from the end of the runway. There have been survivors. Charlie Martz, a survivor of the crash, described it this way.
It began to yaw and dip some more, and finally we hit with the right wing down. I was on the right-hand side, and I was peeking, if you will, and saw it hit, and then just, closed the eyes and hope, and had a pillow over my head, and we rolled, and upside down and inside out, and every which way. The plane broke into three pieces, and bodies all over the place. I ended up upside down. I unfastened my belt and dropped a little ways, which wasn't too bad, and the smoke's coming in. Finally, I saw what I thought was an open window, but it was flames. I said, "The hell with it, I'm going for it," and I ran through the flames. And looking at it, I got some mud. I mean, I can't believe it. And people with feet missing and arms missing. It's the goddamnest thing I've ever seen in my life.
We don't know how many others, like Mr. Martz, survived the crash of the 298 people said to have been aboard. There have been other survivors, however, and at St. Luke's Medical Center in Sioux City, Janet Flanagan, who's the Community Relations Director, is on the line with us now. Ms. Flanagan, can you tell us how many survivors have been brought to your hospital?
I can tell you apparently there may be dozens of survivors. At this time, our reports show that 26 persons, victims who we call walking wounded, arrived at St. Luke's for care. These are people who literally, I'm told, were able to walk on their own power, although they were injured. We also have reports that 9 persons have been brought to us with critical injuries, many or most of those with burns. That group does include adults and children, and we're waiting to hear the outcome of that. We do also, at this time, I believe, expect more victims to arrive, whether with serious or critical wounds or, again, as walking wounded, and we're standing by.
Janet Flanagan at St. Luke's Hospital in Sioux City. The DC-10 is an airplane with a history of hydraulic failures. Mark Phillips is in Washington, and perhaps, Mark, you can tell us what might have happened this afternoon.
Charles, as first details of the crash came in here late this afternoon, the NTSB began assembling a crash investigation team which will head for Sioux City this evening. Until they begin their work on the scene, all causes of the disaster are largely speculation, but some conclusions can be drawn from the radio report from the cockpit that the plane experienced hydraulic failure. That being the case, the plane was in severe difficulty from the moment of that failure. But aviation experts say it was not necessarily doomed.
It would provide complications for landing because of the lack of flaps, landing flaps, complications with the braking system, steering system, but for the landing, but surely no direct problems in flight.
There has been a history of hydraulic problems with the DC-10. There were dozens of incidents involving hydraulic difficulties early in the airplane's history, and at least 2 crashes, one in Chicago and one in Paris, were traced to hydraulic failure. At one point, the FAA issued a directive requiring wholesale modification of the DC-10's hydraulics. And in fact, recently the plane had seemed to be over that particular type of problem. In the Paris crash of a Turkish Airlines DC-10, a failure in the cargo door led to decompression in the plane, which caused the floor to give way, cutting hydraulic lines. Later modifications had those lines being led across the ceiling of the plane. The inquiry into this crash will center obviously on hydraulics and what caused their failure. Charles?
Thank you, Mark. To repeat, United 232, a DC-10, attempting a landing at Sioux City, Iowa, after a hydraulic failure, almost made it, but crashed, cartwheeled, broke apart, with 298 people apparently aboard. Some of them, we don't yet know how many, have survived. We'll have more on the crash later in the broadcast. To tell you again the bad news of this evening, a United Airlines DC-10 attempting an emergency landing after it experienced hydraulic failure crashed and cartwheeled and burned and broke apart just short of the runway at the Sioux City, Iowa airport. There were survivors. Late reports are that there may have been as many as 150 survivors of the 298 people, including 11 crew members who were aboard Flight 232. The flight was bound from Denver to Chicago when it attempted its emergency landing. A police officer at the airport said the plane was having problems before it went down. They were prepared at the scene. They knew about the problems. According to an Air National Guard sergeant who was listening to the transmissions, the plane attempted its approach to Sioux City with no electric power, no steering, and no brakes. We'll return to the air with further important developments if we learn about them this evening. That's the CBS Evening News. I'm Charles Kuralt, sitting in for Dan Rather. Good night. This is the CBS Evening News. I'm Charles Kuralt, sitting in for Dan Rather. Good evening. After the hard facts of disaster, the hard questions. The hard facts are these. A United Airlines DC-10 with 293 people aboard crashed yesterday while attempting an emergency landing at Sioux City, Iowa. Amazingly, at last count, 184 people survived. And now the hard question. Why did the plane crash? Mark Phillips looked into that.
How a state-of-the-art airplane bound for Chicago became a cartwheeling ball of fire on a Sioux City runway is the mystery NTSB investigators began trying to unravel today. The crash impact footprint spread over an area close to a mile long. Investigators said it was the biggest crash site they'd ever seen. But the site, the radio reports of the pilot, and the recollections of survivors have already begun to yield clues.
Air Traffic Control Center in Minneapolis was told that by this flight that they had lost their number 2 engine.
The plane was at cruising altitude when its number 2 engine, the tail engine, blew. Parts of it were found in a farmer's field miles away.
45 minutes before we crashed, the engine blew. There was an explosion, literally an explosion.
After he regained control of the aircraft, pilot A.C. Haynes then radioed his problems were getting worse.
Shortly later, after 3:17, they were told that they had lost their hydraulics.
The DC-10 has 3 separate hydraulic systems running off its engines. The systems are supposed to be independent to protect against complete loss of control. But the plumbing for those systems is interconnected at various places on the plane, particularly in the tail section. The violent explosion of the tail engine could well have severed all the hydraulic lines in that area.
And my only explanation to complete hydraulic system failure is that when number 2 exploded, it did in some way pierce the protective casing and severed the interconnecting hydraulic lines.
Investigators have found 3 engines at the crash site, and with them have found another clue.
We have one engine that is missing the fan section of the engine.
The type of engine used in this DC-10, a General Electric model, has had some problems in the past with partial disintegration of its fan section. At Purdue University today, a flight simulator was used to see if a jetliner could be flown with a complete hydraulic failure that was reported on the United flight. 4 out of 5 times, the simulator crashed.
I don't think that anybody has ever tried to land a DC-10 before without any hydraulic systems. Nobody's ever done that. There are no procedures for it.
This afternoon, the flight recorder boxes arrived in good shape in Washington, where they'll be examined. With the inquiry only in its preliminary stages, investigators say there is no cause and there are no plans to ground the entire DC-10 fleet. Mark Phillips, CBS News, Sioux City.
A disaster like the crash of United Flight 232 produces its heroes. Sioux City, Iowa, a city of 82,000, seemed rich in heroes after this crash. There were vacationing, off-duty, and former employees at the city's 2 hospitals who returned to work, so that at times there were 2 doctors for every injured passenger. There were the people who formed a line a block and a half long to donate blood, so the supply was triple what was needed. There were hospitals in Sioux Falls and Omaha, which donated so many medical supplies that one of the hospitals in Sioux City said it received 5 months' inventory in 3 hours. There were students at Briarcliff College who acted just like family for travelers who spent the night at the school. After the crash, there were stories of violent death and of incredible survival. Frank Courier begins our reports.
In a grim sweep through mud and field corn an inch at a time, National Guard troops today searched for more bodies, crash victims still unaccounted for at the Sioux City disaster site.
The wreckage is bad, and I think we can be deeply thankful that those that survived did survive.
Crash investigators, witnesses, and survivors today are calling it a miracle. How a jumbo jet packed with nearly 300 people can crash land in a ball of flame, and more than half live to tell about it.
When you're flying at a steady speed and all of a sudden feel like you hit a brick wall, it's exactly what it felt like.
I could just feel myself rolling and rolling. It was terrible.
Some are attributing Flight 232's survival rate in part to clear weather, soft rain-swollen ground, and the airport's high state of readiness.
We've practiced, we've drilled, we work together, we coordinate together.
United Airlines, whose chairman today viewed the crash site, was quick to applaud the veteran pilot, 𝗨𝗶𝘁𝗶𝗀𝗋.
His performance obviously was extraordinary. He's a 33-year veteran of United, obviously a very, very experienced pilot.
Others say it was fate, the way the jet flipped and skidded end over end, protecting the cockpit, the aft cabin, and 11 rows in the center of the fuselage. These were people who simply walked away.
Rows 9 through 19 were the people with no injury or only minor injuries, because that structure was intact around them.
It's a phenomenal thing that this many people survived it.
While many today rejoiced the phenomenal luck of those who survived Flight 232, others saw only the horror of an aviation disaster and reflected on the tragedy of so many lives lost in an Iowa cornfield. Frank Courier, CBS News, Sioux City.
I didn't look back. I just kept telling everybody to run.
We all three grabbed hands, and then we ran down a road.
The survivors who stayed overnight in a dormitory at Briarcliff College couldn't stop talking about it. The crash, their escape, their incredible good fortune.
Never honestly thought it was the end.
They talked about their fear as if talking about it would make the images go away.
I thought we were going to crash, and we did.
But again and again, the joy.
Oh, man. I'm surprised I'm alive.
So miraculous how so many of us made it.
Ellen Badiz was sitting with 2.5-year-old Aaron. Her husband Adrian and 6-year-old Eric were 14 rows ahead, but they all got out. And now Adrian and Eric are patients at the Marion Health Center.
She talked about the crash a whole lot last night. He had a hard time sleeping. Eric and I thought my wife and his brother died. Because, you just look at this devastation and say, how can anybody leave through that?
Miracle. That's the survivor's word. The Michelsons made it through, and so did 1-year-old Sabrina, who for a while was lost.
To me, and on impact, she was just wrenched completely from my arms, and I didn't know where she was, sucked out the window or in debris or what.
Sabrina was on the floor between the seats. Another survivor picked her up.
That everybody's there and everybody's walking and nobody had any bruises to speak of, or just a miracle at that point.
They stand in the windows, these survivors, looking out over a countryside so peaceful that one could hardly imagine a disaster here. But it did happen, and these men and women and children will never forget it.
I'm not sure that I want to go to sleep yet. I'm not sure that I want to be alone yet. Because there's stuff that happened that I don't really want to think about.
But he is thinking about it. They all are. Betsy Aaron, CBS News, Sioux City, Iowa.
This is the CBS Evening News. Dan Rather reporting tonight from our affiliate WBTV in Charlotte, North Carolina. Good evening. Deepening questions tonight about possible maintenance and human error in the United Airlines DC-10 that crashed Wednesday in Sioux City, Iowa. At least 184 people survived in that crash. At least 109 people died. Against a backdrop of relief and sorrow, investigators are looking especially closely for clues in a suspect engine. Mark Phillips has our report.
Investigators here continue to look at all possible causes of this crash, but they have zeroed in on the plane's tail section, on the number 2 engine mounted there. When that engine was found amid the wreckage, the 6-foot-high fan unit on the front of it was missing, completely gone.
Missing is the whole fan rotor system, including the blades, the disc, and part of the rotor. And this is the first time on this type of engine that we have ever seen that.
The main theory on the cause of the disaster is that the engine fan disintegrated in flight. Pieces of the unit then exploded through the engine casing, puncturing the plane's right stabilizer and severing crucial hydraulic lines. The first close-up views of the wreckage today showed the damage done by the exploding fan pieces, the plane's stabilizer, the severed hydraulic lines.
These blades are the things we're talking about possibly coming out of the engine and acting like shrapnel as it goes through the side of the case or through the engine.
And investigators have made another unusual discovery around the suspect tail engine.
We have found 2 large nuts in the acoustic panel of the number 2 engine. We don't know where they came from at this time.
The number 2 engine had had major pneumatic cooling system work done on it the day before the crash. While investigators have made no public connection between that work and Wednesday's explosion, aviation experts are asking questions.
Could there have been a human error in the maintenance process that engine last went through? Could someone not have tightened something properly?
Passengers, too, are wondering how this could happen and blaming the airline.
But I do blame someone, because if that plane would have been in good condition, that would not have happened. I don't feel they're taking care of these airplanes right.
A temporary morgue has been set up while the difficult task of identifying victims continues. And more of the survivors left for home today. Their part in the investigation over for now. But the pilot and flight crew are still in the hospital here. They have not yet spoken with investigators. The psychiatrists say they are not ready.
Feeling a great deal of sadness, a great deal of regret, in the sense that they, of course, feel somewhat responsible.
The miracle and the tragedy of United Flight 232. It's now in the hands of investigators. With lawsuits threatened, it's very likely soon to be in the hands of the courts. Mark Phillips, CBS News, Sioux City.
8 people were killed and more than 90 injured when a Philippine airliner crashed on landing in Manila today. The plane, with 98 people aboard, was trying to land in a rainstorm. Passengers said it bounced along the runway, then plowed through a concrete wall and across a highway, destroying several cars in its path. The 8 people killed were all trapped and crushed in their cars.